The journey toward knowing yourself deeply begins with one of the most courageous acts a human being can ever perform, facing the inner reflection. It sounds simple, even poetic, but in reality, it is one of the hardest steps one can take. For most of life, we are trained to look outward, to compare, to achieve, to seek validation, to understand the world around us. But rarely are we taught how to look inward. Yet true wisdom, peace, and authenticity come only when you dare to turn that mirror toward yourself and gaze into your own truth, unfiltered and unguarded. When you look into the inner mirror, what you see at first may not always be pleasant. The reflection might reveal your fears, insecurities, unhealed wounds, or contradictions between who you think you are and who you truly are. It shows the masks you wear to be accepted, the roles you play to be loved, and the pretenses you maintain to feel worthy. Many people avoid this reflection precisely because it strips away illusions, and illusions are comfortable, but illusions also keep you trapped. To know yourself deeply, you must be willing to face both the beauty and the brokenness that reside within. This moment of confrontation marks the beginning of self-awareness, the awakening of consciousness. It is the point when you stop blaming the world for your dissatisfaction and start realizing that everything you experience externally is a mirror of what exists internally. The people who irritate you, the situations that hurt you, the emotions that overwhelm you, they are all reflections of the inner landscape you've been avoiding. When you recognize this truth, life ceases to be something that happens to you and becomes something that reveals you. Every experience becomes a teacher, every emotion a messenger, every challenge a mirror. Facing your inner reflection requires honesty, but more importantly, compassion. Self-awareness without compassion can quickly turn into self-criticism, which closes the heart rather than opening it. You must remember that the purpose of looking within is not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. You are not searching for perfection. You are seeking truth. And truth, no matter how raw or uncomfortable, always leads to freedom. When you can look at yourself and say, "This is who I am right now, and that's okay," you create space for healing and transformation. Acceptance becomes the soil in which growth can occur. The mirror within doesn't only show flaws, it also reveals hidden strength and light that you may have forgotten. Beneath the layers of fear and doubt lies a core of resilience, creativity, and love that has always been there. Most people spend their lives looking for these qualities outside, in others, in achievements, in possessions, without realizing that what they seek has always been within. When you face yourself completely, you reconnect with this inner source. You begin to see that your value was never dependent on external approval. You were worthy all along, you just needed to remember it. This process of inner reflection often begins in silence. In a world full of noise, distraction, and constant movement, sitting quietly with yourself can feel strange, even uncomfortable. But silence is the gateway to self-awareness. When you stop running, when you stop filling every moment with activity or entertainment, your inner world starts to speak. You begin to hear the whispers of your own truth, the quiet feelings that were buried beneath the noise of daily life. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. And in that presence, you begin to see yourself clearly. Facing your inner reflection is not a one-time event, it is a continuous practice. The mirror of the soul changes as you change. Each stage of life brings new experiences, and with them, new reflections. Sometimes the mirror shows you aspects of yourself that you thought you had healed but still linger within the shadows. Other times it surprises you with new strength or clarity that you never knew you possessed. The key is to approach each reflection with curiosity rather than resistance. When you can ask, "What is this moment trying to show me about myself?" you transform pain into wisdom. This stage also reveals an important truth, that the external world is not separate from your inner state. Your relationships, career, and circumstances often reflect what you believe about yourself. If you see constant conflict around you, It may mirror unresolved tension within. If you feel unloved, it might reveal that you have not yet learned to love yourself fully. As you deepen your self-awareness, you begin to change your internal dialogue, and your outer world starts to shift accordingly. The mirror teaches you that transformation doesn't come from controlling external situations, but from healing the internal ones. However, facing yourself also requires patience. Many people want instant clarity, but true understanding unfolds gradually. Self-awareness deepens layer by layer, much like peeling an onion. At each layer you discover parts of yourself, old wounds, forgotten dreams, conditioned beliefs, and as you process them, you move closer to your authentic core. The process may bring tears, confusion, or even anger, but with each release, you grow lighter. The mirror within never lies, but it also never rushes. It waits for you to be ready to see what you need to see, not what you want to see. Through this inner work, you begin to develop a profound relationship with yourself. You learn to listen to your feelings, understand your triggers, and identify your needs without shame. You realize that self-knowledge is the foundation of all genuine relationships. For how can you truly connect with others if you are disconnected from yourself? The more you understand your own fears and desires, the more empathy you develop for others. The mirror within becomes not just a tool for self-awareness, but a bridge to compassion and connection. Ultimately, facing the inner reflection is an act of courage and liberation. It frees you from the false identities that have limited you and brings you closer to your authentic essence. It is the first and most essential step in the lifelong journey of self-realization. Once you face yourself fully, the fear of the unknown begins to fade, because you understand that everything external is simply an extension of your internal world. You begin to move through life with greater awareness, clarity, and peace, knowing that the answers you seek are not out there but within. And as you stand before the mirror of your own being, seeing not just your reflection but your truth, you realize something profound, that knowing yourself deeply is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you've always been. This realization leads naturally into the next stage of the journey, embracing the shadow self, where you learn that to know yourself completely, you must also accept the parts of you that hide in darkness. Once you have faced the inner reflection and begun to see yourself with honest awareness, the next step on the journey of knowing yourself deeply is learning to embrace your shadow self. This is the most transformative and confronting stage of self-discovery, a descent into the hidden chambers of your psyche where you've buried everything you didn't want to see, feel, or acknowledge. It is where your unhealed wounds, fears, and suppressed emotions reside, waiting not to be feared or destroyed, but to be understood and integrated. The shadow self, a term made popular by psychologist Carl Jung, represents all the parts of yourself that you've disowned. The anger you were taught to hide, the jealousy you deny, the guilt you suppress, the desires you judge. Society, family, and even religion often condition you to divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable pieces. You learn early on that some emotions make you good and others make you bad, that certain traits win love while others bring rejection. So, you push the disapproved parts into the dark corners of your subconscious, believing that if you ignore them long enough, they will disappear. But they don't. They linger, shaping your thoughts, reactions, and relationships in unseen ways. Facing your reflection was the beginning of awareness. Embracing the shadow is the deepening of that awareness into wholeness. When you first confront your shadow, it can feel uncomfortable, even frightening. You may see aspects of yourself that contradict the image you've carefully constructed. The people-pleaser who secretly resents others, the confident person who quietly doubts their worth, the kind soul who sometimes feels envy or rage. The ego resists this stage because it threatens its illusion of perfection. Yet without this confrontation, there can be no authenticity. You cannot truly know yourself while rejecting half of who you are. To embrace the shadow is to practice radical acceptance. It means saying to yourself, yes, even this belongs. It means understanding that your darker emotions are not your enemies, they are messengers. Anger, for instance, can point toward boundaries that have been violated. Jealousy may reveal a part of you longing for self-recognition. Fear can signal the edge of your comfort zone, inviting you to grow. Each so-called negative emotion has wisdom to offer if only you stop judging it long enough to listen. When you give these parts of yourself a voice, they stop sabotaging you from the shadows and start guiding you toward healing. This stage also invites humility. It reminds you that no human being is purely light or purely dark. You are a balance of both. The shadow keeps you grounded, reminding you of your humanity. It protects you from spiritual arrogance, from believing that self-growth is about transcending your flaws, rather than understanding them. When you stop pretending to be good and instead strive to be whole, you cultivate genuine compassion, not only for yourself but for others. You realize that everyone carries their own hidden struggles, their own inner wars, and that judgment serves no purpose. Compassion replaces condemnation, both inward and outward. Embracing your shadow doesn't mean indulging it or letting it control you. It means integrating it consciously. Imagine your psyche as a house. The shadow is the locked basement you've ignored for years. To embrace it is not to move in and live there. It is to unlock the door, shine a light, and explore what's inside. You may find old pain that needs to be released, beliefs that no longer serve you, or even forgotten gifts. Many people don't realize that the shadow doesn't only hold your wounds, it also holds your untapped potential. The traits you suppress because of fear or shame often contain your greatest strengths. For example, someone who represses anger may also repress their ability to assert themselves. Someone who hides their ambition may also hide their capacity for leadership. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim these lost aspects. You become more balanced, more confident, and more whole. You begin to express emotions in healthy ways, rather than projecting them unconsciously onto others. Instead of blaming the world for your pain, you take responsibility for it. This is the essence of emotional maturity. As you embrace the shadow, you will notice that your relationships begin to transform. The people who used to trigger you the most often reflect your unacknowledged parts. Once you own those parts, the charge fades. You no longer need to control, fix, or judge others, because you understand that what you see in them is often a mirror of yourself. This awareness brings peace and humility to your interactions. You stop expecting others to carry your unhealed emotions and start relating to them from authenticity instead of projection. The process of shadow work also deepens your connection to creativity and intuition. Many artists, thinkers, and visionaries draw inspiration from the depths of the human psyche. When you stop fearing your darkness, you unlock new layers of imagination and emotional depth. The shadow, once integrated, becomes a wellspring of raw, honest expression. It fuels passion, empathy, and artistry because it reconnects you with the full spectrum of human experience. You no longer live half alive, repressing what makes you human. You begin to live fully, embracing every color of your inner world. The connection between this stage and the previous one, facing the inner reflection, is profound. The mirror shows you the surface truth. The shadow takes you beneath it. Facing your reflection awakens awareness. Embracing your shadow deepens that awareness into transformation. In the first stage, you learn to look inward without fear. In this stage, you learn to love what you find there, even when it's difficult. It is the difference between seeing your wounds and healing them, between knowing your fears and making peace with them. Yet this path is not linear. You may revisit the shadow many times in your life. Each time you face a new challenge, relationship, or transition, another layer of your unconscious may surface for integration. The key is to meet each emergence with curiosity, not resistance. Darkness loses its power when it is brought into light. When you can say, yes, this too is me, You reclaim your energy from the depths of denial and step closer to wholeness. To embrace your shadow is to dissolve the illusion of separation within yourself. You stop living in duality, good versus bad, light versus dark, and begin to experience the unity of being. You realize that love and fear, courage and doubt, joy and sorrow are not opposites but complements. Each exists to give meaning to the other. Without shadow, there is no depth to light. Without pain, there is no appreciation for peace. When you integrate your shadow, you stop running from life itself and begin to live it in full presence. In this acceptance, something remarkable happens. The energy once trapped in suppression begins to flow freely. You feel lighter, more alive, more real. You discover that your darkness was never the enemy. Your avoidance of it was. The moment you embrace it, the shadow transforms from monster to mentor, from fear to wisdom. It becomes an ally that keeps you honest, humble, and deeply human. This integration leads naturally into the next stage, understanding the patterns of the mind. Once you have faced your reflection and accepted your shadow, you are ready to explore the inner mechanisms that shape your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. It is through this awareness of mental patterns that true liberation begins. The understanding that you are not your mind, but the consciousness that observes it. After embracing the shadow self, the next phase in the journey of knowing yourself deeply is to understand the intricate patterns of the mind, the invisible threads that weave your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors into the tapestry of your life. The human mind is both a creator and a deceiver. It can build bridges of understanding or walls of illusion. To know yourself truly, you must go beyond the surface of what you think and feel, and begin to observe how your mind constructs your inner and outer reality. The mind operates like a vast ocean, calm on the surface at times, but filled with powerful undercurrents below. Every belief, memory, and experience shapes its tides. Much of what you call your personality is not your true essence, but a collection of conditioned patterns formed through years of repetition, reward, and rejection. These patterns silently dictate how you respond to life, often without your conscious awareness. They determine why you fear certain things, why you repeat the same mistakes, and why some emotions seem to control you more than others. To understand your mind, you must first recognize that you are not your thoughts. This realization may sound simple, yet it is revolutionary. The moment you begin to watch your thoughts instead of being lost in them, you take the first step toward liberation. Thoughts arise spontaneously, shaped by memories, emotions, and external stimuli. You cannot always control what appears in your mind, but you can choose how to engage with it. The problem arises when you identify completely with every thought, believing that because you think it, it must be true. Imagine your mind as a stage, and your thoughts as actors constantly performing. Some thoughts are confident and inspiring, others are fearful and self-critical. Most people spend their lives being absorbed in the play, forgetting that they are the audience as well. But when you begin to observe the mind, you step back into the role of the witness. You start seeing the patterns, the recurring fears, the repeated judgments, the automatic stories. This awareness doesn't require you to stop thinking. It simply invites you to see thoughts as transient events, not as your identity. These patterns often originate in childhood. Every experience leaves an imprint on the mind, a belief about what is safe, acceptable, or lovable. If you were praised only when you succeeded, your mind may form the pattern that worth equals achievement. If you were shamed for expressing anger, your mind may associate confrontation with danger. Over time, these associations crystallize into unconscious programs that shape how you see yourself and others. You may react to the present as though you're still living in the past, repeating emotional scripts that no longer serve you. Understanding these patterns requires compassion, not condemnation. You are not to blame for your conditioning. It was learned for survival. The mind's primary purpose is to protect you from pain. When you were hurt, it created stories and defenses to shield you. The challenge arises when those defenses persist long after the threat has passed. What once protected you may now imprison you. The same walls that kept you safe from rejection may now keep you from intimacy. The perfectionism that shielded you from criticism may now prevent you from peace. To truly know yourself, you must study these mental patterns with gentle curiosity. Meditation, journaling, and mindful reflection are powerful tools for this exploration. When you sit in stillness, the mind reveals its layers. You begin to notice how one thought triggers another, how emotions arise and fade, how stories repeat like echoes. Over time, patterns that once controlled you start to lose their grip. You realize that your suffering often stems not from what happens, but from the meaning your mind attaches to it. This stage of self-discovery is deeply connected to the previous one. Embracing the shadow. When you face your shadow, you uncover the emotions and instincts that the mind has tried to suppress. When you understand the mind, you see how it uses thoughts to continue that suppression. The shadow hides in feelings, the mind hides in stories. The mind will often justify avoidance with logic, telling you why you were right to fear, why you shouldn't forgive, why you're not enough. These narratives seem rational, but they are often rooted in unexamined wounds. Only by observing them can you see their origins and choose differently. Awareness of thought patterns also reveals the power of repetition. Whatever you focus on, you reinforce. If your mind constantly cycles through self-doubt, that doubt becomes a mental habit. If you feed it gratitude, gratitude grows stronger. The brain is neuroplastic. It rewires based on what you practice. This means that understanding your patterns is not only about recognition, but also about transformation. Once you identify a limiting belief, you can begin to replace it with a more truthful one. For example, instead of unconsciously repeating, "I'm not good enough," you can consciously remind yourself, "I am learning, growing, and evolving." Over time, the new belief becomes your new mental default. Yet, the goal here is not to control the mind, but to coexist with it peacefully. Control implies struggle, understanding implies harmony. The mind will continue to generate thoughts. That is its nature. The key is to remain centered in awareness, allowing thoughts to pass like clouds across the sky. You don't chase them or resist them, you simply watch. This witnessing state is the essence of mindfulness, a space where clarity, creativity, and intuition naturally emerge. When you reach this level of self-awareness, you begin to see that your thoughts are not random. They reflect your inner state. Angry thoughts arise when you are carrying unresolved pain. Fearful thoughts surface when you are disconnected from trust. Instead of fighting these thoughts, you can use them as mirrors. Each mental pattern points toward a deeper emotional truth. In this way, the mind becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The more you understand your mental patterns, the more you recognize the illusion of control that the mind clings to. It constantly tries to predict, label, and control life in order to feel safe. But life, by its nature, is unpredictable. When you realize that you can observe thoughts without obeying them, you reclaim your freedom. You stop being a prisoner of mental noise and start living from conscious choice. This awareness also transforms relationships. You begin to see how your perceptions are filtered through your mental patterns. You may realize that what you called truth about others was often just your projection, a reflection of your own fears or expectations. When you understand this, compassion deepens. You stop reacting impulsively to others' behavior and start responding from awareness. This is how understanding your mind not only heals you, but also heals your connection with the world. Eventually, you realize that beneath all thoughts there is a silent awareness, the stillness that observes everything yet remains untouched. This awareness is who you truly are. The mind is the instrument. Awareness is the musician. When you identify with the instrument, you get lost in noise. When you rest in awareness, you create harmony. Knowing yourself deeply means shifting this identification from the thinker to the observer, from the story to the storyteller. The journey through this stage is not about silencing the mind, but about befriending it. When When you understand its patterns, you no longer fear them. You can thank the mind for trying to protect you, even as you gently teach it new ways of being. Over time, the mental chatter softens, the inner conflicts quiet, and a sense of clarity emerges. You begin to see life as it is, not as your mind interprets it. This understanding naturally leads to the next stage, awakening emotional intelligence, where you learn to balance the intellect of the mind with the wisdom of the heart. For while the mind gives structure to understanding, the heart gives depth to experience. When the two align, self-knowledge transforms into self-realization, a living harmony between thought, feeling, and being. After understanding the patterns of the mind, the next stage in the journey of knowing yourself deeply is awakening emotional intelligence, the art of recognizing, understanding, and harmonizing your emotions in a way that brings clarity, balance, and compassion to your inner and outer life. While the mind gives structure to your understanding, emotions give depth to your experience. If the mind is the map, emotion is the compass. It shows where you truly are. Without this awareness, you can easily become lost in thought, detached from your heart, and disconnected from your essence. Emotional intelligence begins with one simple yet profound realization. Emotions are messengers, not enemies. Every emotion, whether joy or anger, peace or fear, arises with a purpose: to communicate something about your inner state and your relationship to life. When you deny or suppress these emotions, you silence your own truth. Many people live their entire lives running from what they feel, believing that emotions are a sign of weakness. Yet, denying emotions doesn't make them disappear. It only pushes them deeper into the subconscious, where they quietly influence your thoughts, behaviors, and choices. To awaken emotional intelligence, you must first cultivate emotional awareness, the ability to notice what you are feeling in each moment without judgment. This awareness acts like a light shining into the hidden corners of your inner world. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you begin to observe, "Anger is arising in me." This subtle shift creates space between you and the emotion, allowing you to witness it rather than be consumed by it. You realize that emotions are temporary waves on the ocean of your being. They rise, peak, and pass away. The more you observe them, the less control they have over you. Emotional awareness leads to emotional understanding. Each emotion has its own wisdom. Anger often hides pain or unmet needs. Fear reveals areas where trust is lacking. Sadness signals the need for release and healing. Joy emerges when you are in alignment with your true self. When you begin to see emotions not as random disturbances but as intelligent signals, you start decoding the language of your inner self. This understanding transforms emotional chaos into emotional clarity. But awakening emotional intelligence goes beyond awareness and understanding. It involves integration. Integration means allowing emotions to flow through you without resistance, yet not letting them dictate your actions. For example, when anger arises, instead of suppressing it or exploding outward, you can pause, feel it fully in your body, understand what it's trying to say, and respond consciously. Perhaps that anger is reminding you to set boundaries or to speak your truth. When you integrate emotion with awareness, emotion becomes energy in motion, a source of strength rather than suffering. This stage is deeply connected to the previous one, understanding the patterns of the mind. The mind and emotions are like two sides of the same coin. Your thoughts shape your emotions, and your emotions influence your thoughts. A fearful thought can trigger anxiety, and unresolved emotions can generate repetitive thinking. When you understand your mental patterns, you begin to see how certain thoughts trigger emotional reactions. And when you develop emotional intelligence, you can calm the emotional storms that feed those thoughts. Together, these two aspects create harmony between head and heart. Emotional intelligence also teaches empathy, the ability to sense and understand what others feel without losing your own center. When you become emotionally aware, you naturally become more compassionate toward others. You begin to see that everyone is fighting invisible battles, that every harsh word often hides pain, and that kindness is not weakness, but wisdom. True empathy arises not from pity, but from shared humanity, from recognizing in others the same emotions you have learned to understand in yourself. At its core, emotional intelligence is also about authenticity. You cannot know yourself deeply if you are afraid to feel deeply. To live authentically, you must be willing to experience your emotions fully and express them honestly. This doesn't mean reacting impulsively or wearing your heart on your sleeve. It means being real with what you feel. When you are sad, allow the sadness. When you are joyful, celebrate it. Authenticity is the bridge between emotional truth and inner peace. However, emotional intelligence is not about being positive all the time. In fact, one of its greatest lessons is that all emotions, even the painful ones, have value. When you stop labeling emotions as good or bad, you open yourself to the full spectrum of human experience. Pain teaches resilience, grief deepens empathy, and uncertainty cultivates faith. Emotional intelligence transforms suffering into wisdom because it teaches you how to find meaning within emotion, rather than running from it. Developing emotional intelligence also involves learning to regulate emotions. Regulation does not mean suppression. It means creating balance. You learn to pause between feeling and reacting. For instance, when frustration arises, instead of immediately expressing it through harsh words, you take a breath, observe it, and choose how to respond. This pause is the space of freedom, the point where awareness transforms reaction into choice. The more you practice this, the more stable and centered you become, even in difficult situations. As you continue this journey, you realize that emotional intelligence is not just a skill, but a form of wisdom, the wisdom of the heart. While the intellect analyzes, the heart understands. It doesn't need to explain why it feels what it feels. It simply knows. When your heart and mind work together, your actions become aligned, your relationships deepen, and your presence grows calm and magnetic. People sense this authenticity, not because of what you say, but because of the energy you carry. In this awakened state, emotions become sacred. You begin to treat each emotion as a visitor from your soul, bringing a message of transformation. Fear invites courage, anger invites truth, sadness invites healing, and joy invites gratitude. Each feeling becomes a doorway to greater self-awareness. By embracing every emotion as a teacher, you step into a deeper relationship with yourself, one rooted in acceptance and love rather than control and resistance. This awakening of emotional intelligence also deepens your connection to others and to life itself. When you are emotionally aware, you no longer seek to dominate or suppress others' emotions. Instead, you create space for them to feel seen and heard. This is the essence of emotional maturity, being able to hold your emotions and those of others without losing yourself. It is in this space that true intimacy, trust, and connection flourish. Ultimately, awakening emotional intelligence leads you toward emotional freedom, the ability to feel everything without being overwhelmed by anything. You realize that emotions are not obstacles to peace. They are the path to it. By allowing them to move through you with awareness and compassion, you discover the vast stillness beneath them, the unchanging center of your being. And from this stillness arises the next phase of your journey, listening to the language of the heart, where emotion transforms into intuition, and the heart becomes not just the seat of feeling, but the source of wisdom that guides your path toward wholeness. After awakening emotional intelligence, the next step in the journey of knowing yourself deeply is learning to listen to the language of the heart, that quiet, intuitive voice that speaks not in words, but in feelings, impressions, and inner knowing. The mind analyzes, the emotions react, but the heart understands. It doesn't argue or compare, it simply knows what is true. To listen to the heart is to tune into the purest frequency of your being, a wisdom that flows not from logic or memory, but from presence, love, and inner harmony. The heart is often misunderstood as merely the center of emotion, but it is far more than that. In ancient wisdom traditions, the heart was seen as the bridge between the human and the divine, between the finite and the infinite. It connects reason with intuition, body with soul, and thought with spirit. When the heart is open and balanced, you feel aligned. Your actions reflect your truth and your life feels meaningful. When the heart is closed or ignored, you may achieve success but still feel empty inside, disconnected from your deeper purpose. Listening to the heart is not about sentimentality. It is about authenticity. To listen to the heart, you must first learn the art of stillness. The heart speaks in whispers, while the mind shouts in noise. If your life is filled with constant distraction and mental chatter, the voice of the heart remains drowned out. Silence, solitude, and mindful awareness are essential to reconnect with it. When you slow down and breathe deeply, when you let your thoughts settle like dust after a storm, you begin to feel something subtler, a presence, a knowing that doesn't need proof. This is the heart's language, intuitive, gentle, and deeply wise. This stage builds naturally upon the awakening of emotional intelligence. When you learn to observe and integrate your emotions, you clear the energetic clutter that often blocks your heart's communication. Emotions are like waves, while the heart is the ocean beneath them. If the surface is turbulent, you cannot see the reflection of the sky. Once your emotions are acknowledged and balanced, the waters calm and the deeper wisdom of the heart becomes visible. In this way, emotional awareness prepares you to hear the heart's truth. Listening to the heart also means trusting its guidance even when it defies logic. The mind seeks certainty, but the heart thrives on truth. There will be times when your heart urges you toward a path that seems uncertain, to forgive when it's easier to resent, to follow a dream that others doubt, or to walk away from something that looks secure but feels wrong. In those moments, listening to your heart requires courage. But each time you honor its voice, you strengthen your connection with your authentic self. The heart communicates through resonance, that feeling of deep rightness that cannot be explained but can always be felt. When something aligns with your true nature, your heart expands. When it doesn't, your heart contracts. This expansion and contraction are your inner compass, guiding you toward what nourishes your soul and away from what drains it. Many people live disconnected from this compass because they've been taught to trust only external authorities, society, parents, traditions, or expectations, but no external voice can replace the inner truth of your heart. It is the most honest teacher you will ever have. Listening to the heart also transforms your relationships. When you communicate from the mind, you seek to be right. When you communicate from the heart, you seek to connect. The heart listens not to respond, but to understand. It feels the unspoken, the emotions beneath words, the energy behind actions. This deeper listening creates empathy, compassion, and harmony. You begin to see that every person, no matter how distant or different, is also a soul longing to be seen and loved. Through the heart, you recognize the unity behind apparent separation. The heart's language is also the language of intuition. Intuition is not a mysterious gift given to a few. It is the natural intelligence of the heart that everyone possesses but few trust. Intuition speaks instantly, a subtle knowing that emerges before thought. The mind doubts it, questions it, and often overrides it. But with practice, you can learn to distinguish intuition from fear or impulse. True intuition feels calm, clear, and compassionate. It doesn't shout or rush. It simply invites. When you act upon it, life begins to flow with grace, and coincidences turn into synchronicities, signs that you are aligned with the rhythm of existence. To listen to your heart, you must also heal it. Many people carry emotional wounds that keep their hearts closed. Betrayal, loss, rejection, or guilt. These experiences create protective barriers, convincing you that vulnerability is dangerous. But the more you protect yourself from pain, the more you disconnect from love. Healing the heart means reopening it, allowing it to feel again, to grieve, forgive, and trust. The heart heals not by forgetting, but by transforming pain into wisdom. Every scar becomes a reminder of strength and resilience. As you deepen this connection, you realize that the heart's wisdom transcends personal desires. It speaks not only for your own well-being, but for the harmony of all. When you act from the heart, your choices naturally align with compassion, integrity, and love for others. You no longer seek success at the expense of peace, or validation at the cost of truth. The heart unites rather than divides, because it knows that what you give to others, you give to yourself. This understanding marks a turning point in self-realization, the shift from self-centered awareness to universal consciousness. Listening to the heart also teaches surrender. The mind wants to control, but the heart trusts. To live by the heart means to flow with life, rather than fight against it. You begin to understand that not everything is meant to be figured out. Some things are meant to be felt. Trusting the heart doesn't mean life will always be easy, but it ensures it will always be meaningful. Even challenges become opportunities for growth, for the heart sees purpose where the mind sees problems. The connection between this stage and the previous ones is profound. When you face the mirror within, you begin to see your truth. When you embrace your shadow, you reclaim your power. When you understand the mind, you gain clarity. When you awaken emotional intelligence, you cultivate balance. And now, in listening to the heart, you discover wisdom, the silent knowing that integrates all these experiences into harmony. The heart becomes the center of your being, where thought, emotion, and spirit converge. In the stillness of the heart, you find something extraordinary, a sense of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. You realize that this peace was never lost. It was merely obscured by noise and fear. The more you listen, the more you live from this place. Decisions flow effortlessly, love becomes natural, and your life begins to reflect the authenticity of your inner truth. Ultimately, listening to the language of the heart leads you toward the next and final phase of your inner journey, balancing the light and shadow within, where you learn that wholeness is not achieved by choosing light over darkness, but by embracing both as essential parts of your humanity. It is through this balance that you awaken to your true self, the radiant consciousness that has been quietly observing every step of your journey from the very beginning. After learning to listen to the language of the heart, the next and final stage in the journey of knowing yourself deeply is balancing the light and shadow within, the sacred process of integrating all that you are, both the parts you proudly show the world and the parts you've hidden in darkness. This balance is the essence of wholeness. It is the realization that your true self is not found by rejecting darkness in favor of light, but by embracing both as essential and inseparable aspects of your being. To know yourself deeply is to stand in the middle of your inner opposites, love and fear, joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability, and see them not as contradictions, but as complements that together create your human experience. The concept of light and shadow was beautifully explored by the psychologist Carl Jung, who described the shadow as the unconscious aspect of the personality that the ego refuses to identify with. It is made up of everything you repress, deny, or disown: your anger, jealousy, insecurities, fears, and pain. The light, on the other hand, represents your awareness, your virtues, your compassion, and all that is conscious and accepted. For most people, life becomes an endless tug-of-war between these two forces. The ego wants to be only light, to be good, loved, and admired, while pushing away anything it deems bad or unworthy. But this rejection creates inner conflict, because what is denied doesn't disappear. It hides, waiting to be acknowledged. Balancing light and shadow begins with deep acceptance. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. Many people seek spiritual or emotional growth by trying to eliminate their darkness, believing that perfection means being perpetually positive or pure. But true evolution comes not from erasing parts of yourself, but from integrating them. Your shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It holds the keys to your authenticity, creativity, and power. Every emotion you've suppressed, every impulse you've judged, carries a message from the parts of you that long to be understood. When you start to explore your shadow, you may feel discomfort, even fear. You might encounter the anger you've denied, the jealousy you've rationalized, the shame you've buried. Yet facing these emotions with compassion rather than judgment transforms them. Anger, when understood, becomes clarity and strength. Fear, when faced, becomes courage. Pain, when felt, becomes wisdom. Each time you embrace a shadow aspect, you reclaim a piece of your energy that was lost to repression. This reclamation is the essence of healing. This stage connects naturally with the previous one, listening to the language of the heart. The heart provides the compassion and safety needed to confront your shadow without self-condemnation. When the heart is open, it can hold both light and darkness without preference. It knows that both are expressions of the same consciousness. The mind tends to divide, labeling one side good and the other bad, but the heart unites. In this unity, healing occurs. The heart's wisdom whispers that you are not your mistakes, not your wounds, not your fears. You are the awareness that holds them all, to balance light and shadow. You must also release the illusion of perfection. The pursuit of being flawless often leads to self-rejection, because it implies that something about you is inherently wrong. But wholeness is not about being perfect. It's about being real. You are a divine paradox, capable of compassion and cruelty, brilliance and ignorance, courage and doubt. Each quality exists in you because life itself contains all opposites. Day needs night to define it, just as joy needs sorrow to be understood. Trying to eliminate darkness is like trying to erase the night from the cycle of day. It denies the natural rhythm of existence. The key to integration is awareness. Awareness is the light that gently illuminates the shadow without trying to destroy it. When you observe your darker emotions or thoughts without judgment, you begin to see their roots. Perhaps your anger hides a boundary that was violated. Perhaps your jealousy masks an unacknowledged desire. Awareness allows you to see that these shadows are not evil. They are signals pointing you toward unmet needs and unresolved pain. When you understand their message, the energy locked within them becomes available to fuel your growth. This balance also extends to your external life. The way you relate to others mirrors your inner state. The traits you admire in people often reflect the light within you, while the traits you criticize or dislike in others often mirror your own shadow. When you project your unacknowledged qualities onto others, life becomes your mirror, constantly showing you the parts of yourself you have yet to embrace. Recognizing this projection is a powerful step towards self-knowledge. Each person who triggers you becomes a teacher, revealing an unhealed part of your inner world. Balancing the light and shadow within is also about emotional maturity. It means taking responsibility for your reactions, not blaming others for what they evoke in you. When you own your shadow, no one can control you emotionally because you no longer run from your inner truth. You understand that everything you experience, whether it feels light or dark, serves your evolution. Life stops being a battle between good and bad, right and wrong, and becomes a dance of polarity, an ever-shifting play of energy designed to awaken consciousness. In this integration, forgiveness plays a vital role. Forgiveness does not mean excusing harm or forgetting pain. It means releasing the emotional weight of resentment and guilt that binds you to the past. When you forgive yourself, you free your energy from shame and allow love to flow again. When you forgive others, you stop carrying their shadows as your burden. Forgiveness is the bridge between shadow and light, the act of turning wounds into wisdom. Over time, as you embrace this inner balance, you begin to live from a state of inner harmony. You no longer need to project an image of constant positivity or hide your imperfections. You can stand in your truth, raw, real, and radiant, knowing that your light shines brighter because it has passed through darkness. This authenticity gives rise to deep peace, because you are no longer divided within yourself. You are whole. At this stage, something extraordinary happens. The division between light and shadow begins to dissolve entirely. You realize that both are expressions of the same source, the consciousness that experiences them. The light reveals, the shadow conceals, but both serve the evolution of awareness. When you transcend the duality of good and evil, you awaken to the deeper truth that you are not the light or the shadow, but the vast awareness in which both arise. This realization is the dawn of true self-realization. Balancing the light and shadow within also prepares you for authentic living. You stop striving to be something you're not, and start embodying all that you are. You speak your truth without fear, love without conditions, and act without pretense. People feel your presence as genuine and grounding because you are no longer fragmented. You radiate a quiet confidence that comes not from superiority, but from self-acceptance. This harmony between light and shadow marks the culmination of your inner journey, a return to wholeness. The mirror within no longer reflects confusion or conflict, but peace and clarity. You see yourself as you truly are, not as a collection of flaws and virtues, but as a unified being of awareness, capable of infinite growth and compassion. From this place of integration, you live differently. You no longer chase fulfillment in the external world because you found it within. You move through life with grace, responding rather than reacting, loving rather than fearing. You understand that both joy and sorrow, gain and loss, serve your awakening. Every experience becomes sacred, every emotion meaningful, every moment an opportunity to embody your truth. And thus, the journey that began with facing the inner reflection ends here, in balance, in wholeness, in peace. You have faced your mirror, embraced your shadow, understood your mind, awakened your emotions, listened to your heart, and finally united all these parts into one harmonious whole. This is the path of true self-knowledge, not the pursuit of perfection, but the acceptance of totality. It is here, in this balance between light and shadow, that you discover the timeless truth. You are not broken, and you never were. You are, and have always been, whole.